Welcome to Welfare Clinic. This week is the Mental Health Awareness Week, and we're going to talk about mental health and how individuals are affected around the country, and also whether you personally, someone you know, or members of your family may be affected. I have two special guests with me today who works in those fields, will give you information about how individuals are affected by mental health, the families are affected, and also where and how you can get the support that you need. So let me introduce my guests. My first guest is Abdirashid Gulaid, support manager for Mind in Tower Hamlets and Newham. Welcome, Abdi, to the show. And on my far right is Shirin Mustafa, assistant psychologist for East London Foundation Trust. Welcome to the show, Shirin.
Thank you.
Abdi, if I start off with you first of all, in terms of what does Mind do in Tower Hamlets and in Newham?
We provide a variety of services. Mainly, we provide support to individuals, and we provide support also to the community. We also provide group activities. We provide counseling. We provide um, um, employment, resilience, helping people to sort of cope with any
But
distresses that
getting
they
people
have
back also
to
into
recovery.
normality.
Yes, absolutely. So we also campaign for better mental health. We work closely with our colleagues from East London Foundation Trust, with the community, with the mosque, with within the community centres, just to make sure that the community are aware of how to access services, stigma in regards to mental health and discrimination. So that's the type of support, that's the type of work that we do at Mind.
Okay, hold on to that. We'll come back to you. In terms of East London Foundation, what do they do for our viewers, basically?
So I'm specifically working for BME Access, the Tower Hamlets BME Access Service in the Psychology Department of East London Foundation Trust, and our main aim is to improve access and acceptability of talking therapies. So the way we try and do that, it's different to the usual way of doing things, where we actually go out into the community, try and increase awareness about what talking therapy is, and try and adapt our way of delivering talking therapy so it's more suitable and more relevant for the people of our communities that we're working with. And the other aspect of the work we do is also trying to educate and increase awareness to the psychologists and psychiatrists within the trust about the issues that our community want to bring.
Often, when we say mental health, it's such a big and broad word. Words. As soon as we say mental health, often people feel oh, somebody who's mad or somebody that not well in themselves. But mental health could be pretty much anything, literally, couldn't it? From depression, feeling stress, So, would you explain a little bit more in terms of what is mental health and how can one get affected?
I think everybody is affected in some way or another with mental health. We've all got our own mental well-being that we need to look after, and we all go through. Everyone can relate to bad periods of their life that they might be experiencing, a low period where they feel anxious, distressed, and just emotional as well. And there's also the plus side where you have moments where you experience happiness. So I think it's maintaining a balance. Now, what our main working roles are is when somebody experiences unhappiness or distress or anxiety for a long period of time, or if somebody might experience some form of psychosis for a longer period of time, where they might not be able to get the support just from their immediate family, friends, or their inner strength or resources as well. So that's where services can be of great help.
And how do Mind and East London Foundation work in partnership?
I think before we even get to that, I think one of the things is people tend to sort of like look at mental health and they separate it from physical health. And I think if I say to you physical health, the first thing that will come into your mind would be exercise, keeping fit, and so on. With mental health, then straight away, as you said,
is the words in terms of
It's the
the
understanding
illness,
of individuals in
the
terms of
illness,
what they.
and it's exactly the same. Mental health and physical health is exactly the same. It's how you look after one, your body, your mind, and it's all in one. And I think the other thing is in terms of the other aspects you need to look at is 1 in 4, 1 in 6 will have one time in their lives will experience mental health distress. One in 4 will definitely get some kind of we go through, as Shirin said, we go through periods of where it could be a bereavement, it could be you've lost your job, it could be so many different distresses and stresses within the environment we live in, and so it's quite common.
And is the particular gender is more affected? Is men or women more affected in terms of mental health related aspect of it?
I think statistically we can kind of pinpoint certain genders, but it's also about how quickly they're getting the support. So although it may seem on the face of it that women may experience more mental health, women tend to be better at getting support at a more earlier stage. We tend to see men accessing support at a very later stage when things might have gotten a lot worse, and then they have to be sectioned or taken into
And
psychiatric
why
wards.
would that be? Is it because the men often feel that it's their pride that they don't want to open up or go and talk to somebody about whether personal circumstances or like Abdi said, whether it may be job, because often I've come across somebody that he's been working for a particular organization for 14 years, and he was in the verge of losing his job, but he didn't tell his family that he could possibly lose his job. Um,
I
so
think that's linked into, if we think about our own culture, like with the Bangladeshi men within our own culture, there is a sense that the Bangladeshi men are the leaders within our own families and the communities, and they need to uphold a certain type of image.
they are the
Yeah,
provider or
they're
the
the
security
provider.
for their
Yeah.
family.
And it's kind of seen as not manly to open up about your feelings. The way a woman would go and speak to her friends and to her family about things that are affecting her, a man might not do the same, because the conversations between a group of men might be quite different to a group of women. So it tends to get bottled up a lot more.
But they can go, like for example, they can approach Mind or their GP or any other service that might be available in their locality and speak to people privately and discuss issues. Because often, if you leave, as you said, then it could get to a stage where things could be far more complicated than initially it was.
No, absolutely, they can, and the service is available for them. But again, statistics show, regardless, in terms of if you look at the genetic population, men often don't seek help at an earlier stage, and sometimes we need to sort of like tailor the services that we are providing to them. So it's sort of like outreaching, is getting to them and making sure that they are aware that these services are available. Is a service which is an environment which is a safe environment, is confidential. It's something that you could talk to someone privately, and it's not going to be shared with anybody. And one of the things is also we often don't mention is this sort of like taboo subject in terms of the stigma with mental health. And as soon as we tend to sort of like, and it goes across cultures as well, is stigma is one of the biggest barriers that we have. And as soon as somebody says that this person is suffering from mental health distress, it's either they are weak, or it's either they've been put in a scrap heap. So in terms of, say for instance, marriage, in terms of potential and progressing and so on. So it's often hidden.
But also, a lot of young people actually suffers from mental health related issues or being stressed. We often come across young people attending college, doing their exam, or universities also can feel the pressure. As a result of that, they could feel depressed where they're having to do assignment or preparing themselves for exam. Where would those young people can turn for help and support? if they necessarily need it? Or who is, what I'm trying to get out to our viewers is, how do you identify that somebody needs help? So if their parents was looking at their, say, 18-year-old who's doing their exam in a university or in a college, how would they identify if their son or daughter is going through some sort of a stress or mental health related issue?
I think Abdirashid touched on the point of the stigma and how important that actually is, and how it relates to what you're saying in terms of actually recognizing the signs. I think once families start recognizing that there is something like mental health and that it's not something that's so bad, and they can access support for it, there's more of a likelihood of people actually calling for help. What tends to happen is within different families, they tend to ignore the signs of something that might be quite
And
obvious.
is the signs very obvious, or is it quite difficult to pick up the signs up there?
I think it's quite interesting. I mean, this year's mental health awareness week is about
Yeah,
relationship.
the theme is
It's
relationship.
a relationship, and the thing is, it's always sort of like, because you know your loved one and you know that the patterns or their behavior, and the way they are, and if you see them where somebody's being active and being outgoing, all of a sudden they feel lethargic, they don't want to get out of bed, they don't want to talk to anybody, they're isolating themselves. There are signs that you could pick up because you're living in the same environment as the person, so you can't pick up the signs much
And
sooner. But it's all down to families sitting down together and communicating.
do you think that when it comes to children especially, the type of relationship they have with their parents or their elder brother or sister, it actually matters? Because if you have a good relationship, you will open up and discuss any issues you have. If you don't, then often, because something that in the BME community is that you wouldn't often necessarily sit around the dinner table and discuss how was your day today, what did you get up to, things like that. Do you think those kind of discussion actually matters if it's not taking place?
I think it's really quite important that the unit, the family unit, there's a communication, and as you said, people are sort of talking to each other, or the young person has someone to talk to, and offload. And we need to also know it's not just about the young person approaching you, but it's also encouraging them,
Yeah.
and and sort of like trying to sort of, if the one they funny enough, there's a window of opportunity when a young person will come to you, and if you say, "Oh, I don't have time for you," at that moment, you might lose that moment.
Yes.
So you always have to be aware of what is
By
happening.
you turning that person away, there could be.
It's having a
There's something.
culture of support within a family as well. I mean, we can all understand that during exam period, our children, might be more stressed out. So just looking out for things that, might be affecting them, asking for support, and actually doing things as a family. There's lots of research that suggests that, good relationships actually enhance mental well-being.
And
So, yeah.
we actually coming, the time actually goes really fast, and I think that's such an important issue that I think we need to probably do another show and talk more in
Absolutely.
more broad. But in terms of referral, with yourself, Shirin, can people make self-referral, or does it have to come through an agency, i.e. GPs or?
Self-referral tends to suit our BME communities better because they can actually access specific type of support. One of the good things that we've been able to do is some partnership work that I'd like to suggest, because it can be a good way of accessing services as well. We joined up with Mind to deliver some Tree of Life narrative therapy intervention with a Bangladeshi group as well as a Somali group that was already based within the voluntary sector, the Mind base. And what we were able to do is adapt a talking therapy intervention, and we started talking to the members about what they would like within the talking therapy, and they suggested things like faith and things like poetry from the Somali community that was really important. So we were able to adapt it, co-produce it with the members of the group, and then deliver that. And that's been hugely successful, not only because it was actually tailored to the relevant themes that they felt was important, but also because it was delivered in a accessible, familiar setting within the community. And we know that the voluntary sector services within the community tend to be a really easy way to access mental health services.
And just on the final notes, Abdi, often we see the mind actually rely on funding coming from external sources. So what happens if mind doesn't get the funding? What do you say to your users when they come at your door seeking support?
I think with the services within the voluntary sector, it's really vital. I mean, we often see the voluntary sector as something away from the strategy sector, but it complements well with each other, and is community entrenched as well, and is accessible, is responsive in terms of to the needs of the community, and if we provide something like 140 sessions of counseling per week. Now we're hitting that.
That's a lot.
And one of the things where we and is across variety of languages, and is, I mean, if the funding's, we always rely on funding. We always want to better, and sort of like provide more services to the community. But again, we complement what is happening, what the strategy sector is doing. So making sure that people, either we do all the preventative work going into the community, or when somebody comes out from the hospital, we make sure that they don't, have a place where they we look after their wellness. We make sure that they don't go back to the hospital. We put the whole package around them.
So the funding is obviously crucial, and if you
Funding
don't
is
have
quite
if you don't
important,
have the
yeah.
funding, you might not be able to
Yes.
provide the necessary support you need.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Shirin, in 30 seconds, is there anything that you would like to tell our viewers directly in terms of mental health?
I think the main important message would be that mental health can affect anybody, and if somebody is in need of support, to not feel ashamed by it, because it's very similar to physical health. We would go to a GP, we would go and access services if we had leg pain or arm pain, anything like that. So the most important thing would be to be able to know that you can access services. The GP is often a very good point of access for the services. There's Mind as well, and there's also East London Foundation Trust that can provide support.
Abdi, anything you would like to say?
I think it's similar. I think we should not be frightened of mental health. We should be tackling stigma within the community. We should be talking and communicating with each other. We should form relationships with our loved ones, and yes, I mean, it's all the things that Shirin said. We need to tackle stigma, and I believe stigma is one of the biggest barriers that we have for people accessing mental health services at the earliest stage, because statistics show our communities, particularly in Tower Hamlets, are accessing mental health services at the latest stage due to stigma, and we need to tackle that.
Thank you very much to you both for coming and sharing your knowledge. I'm sure our viewers will find that extremely useful. As I said, no doubt we will probably do the show again to get a little bit more details into mental health and how people can seek support and the help they need. Unfortunately, we are end of the show now. I hope you found the show useful. As you have heard from our two experienced guests, that you shouldn't suffer in silence. If you do need help, you should seek help. There's various organizations, including your GP surgery, that you can go and get help. But most importantly, when it comes to young people, the relationship that you as parents have with your children is extremely important. And where you ask them how they're feeling, how their day's been, what they've been up to. Those kind of questions can often trigger whether somebody or your son, your daughter, your family member is going through any kind of stress or depressions or anxiety. So do take care. Do not suffer in silence. Do seek help. Until next time, do take care.